Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Keep the Line Moving, the podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. I am your host, Chris Gargano, and our topic this week is this: the people side of leadership and the people side of coaching. They go hand in hand. We are going to talk to a guest that you want to listen to. It's Olympian Bo Hanson. That's right. He rowed for the Australian national team from 1991 to 2004. In 1992, at 18 years old, Bo became Australia's youngest rower to compete at the Olympics. He competed in the 96, 2000, and 2004 games, winning bronze medals. You have to hear his story. His wife, Liz Masen, was on the podcast back in November. You remember that great conversation? Well, this is her husband, Bo, and together they run the company Athlete Assessments. They do a fantastic job of going into organizations, providing them with assessments to understand how they best work together and get the most out of their employees, team members, coaches, leaders, etc. This conversation will enlighten you. We get into business elements, coaching elements, everything that is complex about leadership and how to relate to one's self-awareness. Here we go, everybody. The conversation begins now on Keep the Line Moving with Bo Hanson. Bo, first of all, tell us about yourself. Your background is really, really impressive. I think it's always good to start there when we have an Olympian on. That's just perfect.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's an Olympic year, and that's always exciting. It sort of takes me back. It's not that I miss rowing. I miss the Olympics, though. I do miss the Olympics. It's such an incredible experience. And, you know, I'm pretty sure I didn't appreciate that in my first Olympics. It was more about the rowing and the event and the opportunity that it presented to win medals. And same with my second and third even. Once I got to my fourth, I really realized that the Olympics is this significant human concept where genuinely people come together to challenge each other in the right spirit. And, you know, I do miss that. It's significant. So, yeah, I started my rowing career way back when I was 18. I was actually made my first Olympic team when I was 18. I'd lost basically every race at school. I think the important thing about that is that when you don't win, there's only one reason why you're doing your sport, and that's because you fundamentally enjoy it and you're getting other things out of it. And I did enjoy the teamwork, and I did enjoy the feeling of the boat trying to go well and the challenge of making it go faster. And yeah, I knew I was physically capable, and coaches had told me that. And a coach who literally just passed away a month ago, I went to his funeral, and you know, he said, despite my results at school, he had belief in me. He had belief that I could do almost whatever I wanted to do in the sport of rowing for our country. And, you know, when someone else believes in you, people often ask that question, how do you help someone believe in themselves? Well, you show belief in them. And for someone who not won anything, to have someone like him believe in me, and he taught me to row, and he gave me a lot of faith. And so, yeah, that was my first experience. And I left school and I basically rowed at the Olympics the year after. And it surprised a lot of people. I think it, to a degree, surprised myself, but you know, you never really know what you're capable of until you throw yourself deep into something and literally just physically try to compete and give as much as you can. And that started off a whole, you know, next four Olympics, really three Olympics of, you know, trying to do the same thing and be better each day. And that was always a great challenge. So yeah, I do miss the Olympics.
Listen, Bo, I love your story, and here's why I love it. The beauty of the human existence is to overcome adversity and then succeed. Something in you, as you articulated, had some stick-to-itiveness to not win, to not win, to not win, to not win, and then all of a sudden stay with it, find a great inspirational coach, and then triumph, and define triumph by getting in the Olympics. When you look back on those years, what is it about your psyche and makeup do you think that had you stay with it to get to the highest level of the sport?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And the reality is, it's a really simple answer. And I enjoyed it. For me, it was a challenge, and you can enjoy the challenge. I enjoyed the feeling of the boat when it started to go well. I actually enjoyed the training. It was super hard. Physically, rowing is one of the most demanding sports you can do. I know you're not going to get, you know, beaten up and smacked about and concussions and broken bones and that type of thing. But the physical challenge of dealing with lactate and the feeling that you get when you're only a quarter way through the race and you're already feeling like your body wants to completely stop, and you've got to find ways to keep going and strategies to do that. I've learned that that's really the life, full stop, and particularly in the business world today. But yeah, that's the answer. Is I just really enjoyed it. And the other thing I learned that I really enjoyed was the people that I was also around, and this challenge of trying to be better. Not everyone has that. I think you have it to a degree, but the people that I was around, they literally were chasing the tiny percentages. I don't talk about one percenters. One percenters would either see you win the Olympic final or not be in it. That's 1% margin. But yeah, it's inspiring being around other people that have that philosophy on what they want to do with their life. But yeah, for me, it's enjoyable. And I think the other key thing, people often think if you go to 4 Olympics and you dedicate so much of your life to that type of existence, you're obviously sacrificing a lot. And I never felt like I sacrificed anything. I only experienced sacrifice towards the end of my career when, Liz and I, we were married and we wanted to have a family. And then I thought, I can't row and have kids. I can't give time to just myself and not to them. And so for me, that's when, this is not a hard choice anymore as to why I don't want to do it. And so, yeah, when you're doing something you love and you are so determined to succeed at, you're not really sacrificing those other things. So I found it easy to push that stuff aside.
So then I would assume you and Liz took that passion that you had for rowing, and Liz in track and field, but you look at that and you have the passion and you generate a company, you create a company. Did you find yourself the skills you learned in athletics were helping you in business? But you said something really interesting, that you can't control people in business and the way that they think, right? And matching that intensity. So how did you, in essence, coach people that you were going into business with to share your passion?
Yeah, it is that. The reality with athlete assessments is that, Liz is the type of person who is, potentially even more single-mindedly dedicated to whatever she wanted to succeed at than what I was. University medalist, highest possible marks that you can get up until when she met me. I think they declined a little bit there, and that's a fact. So I wasn't so helpful for her in some ways. But the reality is that she brings a lot of skill sets that I just don't have. Athlete assessments was the result of, I discovered DISC about the same time Liz did, before the 2000 Olympics. Learned some things about myself in terms of how I prepared, competed, some behaviors that were not working, some behaviors that did work. How do you do them more often? And that self-awareness really propelled me to enjoy and succeed in my sport even more so. I wish I knew about it further back. We thought, well, DISC is such a useful tool and it's utilized in so many other parts of the world and business, particularly to help teams develop and grow and leaders. Why aren't we using it in sport? And so understanding your team members, building better relationships is a performance factor. Even if you look at the fact that if we don't have good relationships, that is detrimental to performance because it's so distracting. And interpersonal stress is some of the most challenging stress that you have to manage. And so we wanted to develop something which was going to help athletes deal with that. And in terms of then trying to create a business where how do we recruit people that have some sense of wanting what we want and believing what we believe. That's hard. It's still hard. And, I can safely say our team now, like it wasn't easy to find those people. It's taken us a while to get to a point where we know the questions to ask and what to look for. And we recruit people that have wanted to live at a certain standard. And yeah, I think that now the team that I'm part of is as great as any of the best Olympic teams that I've been part of in terms of people's dedication and commitment and willingness to live at that level.
I'm incredibly like-minded with you and Liz and your mission, which is I have circled here, highlighted, and written in red, the 2 words, self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
So the concept of self-awareness, you brought that up. It's all over your materials, your videos. You've been guests on podcasts and such. That important concept of people knowing who they are, right? And not getting bogged down by stress that they could have worked out, right? I'm making it sound easy. It is hard. It's very hard to be self-aware. We take it for granted, but this is what you and I do for a living, right? and self-awareness is key to success. How do you convince, I've asked this question on this podcast and I love to hear people's answers. How do you convince somebody who doesn't necessarily agree with the study and the introspection that needs to be done to become more self-aware, that it leads ultimately to better relationships and ultimately more success?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that's the thing about sport, is that the reality is that there are numbers attached to it. That's a simple way to put it, is that coaches and athletes that are more self-aware, they win more often. And so, yeah, when we work with teams that have broken school records, coaches that have gone from on the edge of not getting a reappointment to then becoming coach of the year, teams that have done things never done before in school history. It's not us. It's not like I'm doing something completely different with every team that I work with. The process is pretty similar. And what happens is, when they engage in these conversations, when they learn more about themselves and how to actually work more effectively together, then the team does better. So there's more and more research being done into that today than there ever has been before. So I think that conversation around trying to convince someone that self-awareness is critical, we're having to do that less and less, and more people coming to us. And we have Major League Baseball teams, NFL programs, NBA, and that's the top echelon, and then Olympic programs and top college programs that, also believe that, my role as a coach is not just to teach you some physical and technical skills and strategy, but it's also to develop you as a person, and better people produce better results. And so, when we first started our business 17 years ago, is having to convince someone, that was the case. But again, there is data out there when coaches get sacked and when leaders get sacked more and more today. And even, 15, 20 years ago, there was data suggesting it was a result of those poor relationships. Now, people have poor relationships, is generally a lack of self-awareness as to how to manage themselves in that relationship. So, yeah, I think today more than ever, it's a pretty compelling story. It's not easy to do. No one's perfect in any sense. We all have challenges. And even when you know this stuff about yourself, doesn't remove the fact that you still do it, but being more aware of when you do it, the impact that it's having, being able to manage and adjust. Yeah, I think ultimately you live a more meaningful and satisfying life, which I guess at the end of the day, only you can measure, right?
That's very true. That's very personal, but that's very well put on your part. When you walk into an organization that is struggling and they have elicited, they want your help. When you walk in and you start to assess, in addition to the DISC, but then your personal experience, you walk in, you look, you see, you feel, you're there 40 minutes, an hour, half day, you eat lunch with them. Can you see nowadays, with your extensive experience, when a culture is at a certain level of collaboration, a certain level of self-awareness, a certain level, I can see why maybe haven't had a winning season in 8 years, 9 years. Can you see it and feel it?
Yeah, I can see it. You can see certain behaviors. If we look at culture, it's not easy to measure, and there's complicated ways to do that. And so when we look at a culture, we're looking at, well, what are the behaviors? So if you walk into a locker room, for example, it's so obvious. Like, high performing teams have clean locker rooms. That's just what they do. They have such a high level of care and respect for their environment. They don't need anyone else to look after them. They self-manage. They will have a clean locker room, right? Everything will be neat and tidy. Teams that don't do well, always, it's not sometimes. If the locker room is clean and the team's not doing well, someone else cleaned it up. Okay. So, that was a philosophy we had at even my rowing facility with my coach, Tim McLaren, 8-time Olympic coach, Olympic gold medal coach, multiple medals. We would clean our own facility. Why wouldn't you do that? If you want to be trusted with looking after an expensive piece of equipment that's going to make you go faster, a clean boat was a fast boat. And so show some level of pride. Then you notice things like, do people, do they turn up early for practice? Is the coach waiting when they get there? What sort of conversations happen prior to practice? What level of energy are people bringing? What's their body language when they walk into the facility? Is it like a chore to be there? Is it a job? Or are they genuinely excited to see each other? Do coaches tell their athletes what to do, and this is what we're going to be doing today, and these are our goals, and this is what we have to do this weekend? Or do the athletes have some conversation in that? They're all important indicators. And then you've got the way they deal with practice. So I love watching basketball practices, for example. You can always tell a culture when they're running sprints, for example, and someone's foot, inevitably, multiple people, if it's in a bad team, will not touch the line on every turn. Does someone say something? On better teams, multiple people will say, hey, get your foot over the line next time. And it's not mean or nasty or rude or any of those things. It's just like, hey, yeah, okay, I got you. And there's a positive reply to that, and it's fixed next time. That extends throughout everything. And then you get to the end of practice where, do people hang around? Is there anything written down as to, hey, this is what we did well today. Hey, shout out to you. There's a meaningful huddle, where these things are discussed. And then again, do people just discard, or do they hang around and have some lunch or some dinner together? These are all important indicators as to whether a culture is healthy, and if it's healthy, it has a chance to be high performing. High performance doesn't come before all of the other stuff. It can't, and then you meet coaches that are so excited and motivated, usually by their ego, to win quickly, who don't go through the process of building these foundational blocks in order to be successful. I find that it's just super interesting. Sometimes I'm staggered that, still, I guess that the thing is today, still coaches in sport tend to be blindsided by physicality and skill capability, right? And they miss some of the other vital ingredients that, I watch probably more basketball games today than I've had rowing races, because both my daughters play. And the athlete that is willing to help and do things for others as opposed to self-serve and be individualistic. But yeah, from a cultural perspective, you can see all of those things in action. And they're often the things that we start to work on. Before we get to the complex things, start with those super simple things.
You know what, Bo? You jarred a thought for me, which is when you say you watch basketball a lot, and who's the player that picks up, the opposing team when they get knocked down, or little areas and acts of kindness in the heat of battle, per se, right? On social media, there's a montage of LeBron James taking care of ushers or fans, right?
Yeah.
A young woman dropped a beer and some popcorn or whatever, and he went over and comforted her in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
That says a lot about his character. I'm a fan of LeBron's. What I'm saying is, like, that presence of mind, that compassion, it's not an off switch. You're either into it, or when you drive home or go to the coffee shop or pick up the young lady that dropped the popcorn, right? It's who you become. So my question to you, Bo, is this. Who have you sat across that I don't mean to put you on the spot, but that has really impressed you? That it's like, this person, I see why they're successful. I see why they have a great culture. This is real, and there's depth here. Does anybody come to mind?
Well, yeah, look, there's actually lots of coaches. I won't name names, but the reality is that, most coaches that work with us tend to be aligned to our philosophy, right? They tend to understand that developing the person is fundamentally important. They've tended to understand what winning really looks like. And I talk about that a lot. Like, what does winning look like? And, for coaches that understand, hey, look, the reality is that none of them will keep their job if they don't get wins and, bigger than losses, for example, right? Or win a championship. But how to get to that point. And so coaches that really show that level of care and concern for their athletes, you can see that quickly because they understand the person. They understand more about the player than just their ability to dribble left or right or pull up and do a jump shot or whatever the shooting percentages might be. And, even my daughter, the youngest one particularly, the coaches that she's actually had in her career have just been extraordinary. And one coach in particular for many years now. And you know what? They've won a lot too. And then we had a conversation with someone else about this the other day, and they said, oh, yeah, but she's had a championship team. I said, you do know that a lot of those players have been with her since under 8, and that she's developed them, and a lot of them left because they've had enough ability to go and, drive a team themselves. And we've had new players come in and somehow she's continued to win. And it's not about the X's and O's, but that ability to instill belief in each player, because she truly shows this level of care and concern for the person. And that gives that player belief that when they're out on court, they can make a shot. If they're open, they shoot. If it's at the right time, okay, and they shoot, whether they are a great three-point shooter or not. If they're open and it's a quality shot, you have every right to shoot it. Whereas other coaches are working on this green light system, which you've got to reprove yourself every week. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I've seen championships get won by players that rarely shoot threes, who on the championship day managed to hit them because they were open, it was a good shot, no one was defending them, and they made the shot and they win the game. And you think that wouldn't have happened if we constantly have to prove your belief in me. And so for a coach who truly believes in you, is quite extraordinary. And I'm sure people will know what I'm referring to there. And they're the coaches that really inspire me, and it's not about the X's and O's. I know you need to have that. That'd be like me saying that, to be a great rowing crew, you just need to get along well, or you just need to be good people who help each other out. You know what? No, it's not going to work. To win at the highest level, you need to be phenomenally physically capable. You've got to row well. You've got to have the setup and the mechanics and the mathematics of the boat absolutely perfect. Now, beyond all of that, now we start really dealing with how to actually get the most out of people. Yeah. So, I mean, there are some good examples, and I'm actually going to work with a coach in the next few weeks. He's a football coach. He's another example. I'm continuously impressed by him because, part of it is due to the program, and they've been extraordinarily successful in a Division I league where he doesn't accept payment. He volunteers his time. It's a football program, and it's a massive program. Why is it massive? Because kids want to play there. They'll give up scholarships elsewhere to come to this program. And that, for me, is inspiring. And he gives true opportunities for leadership. And he lets the players have a level of influence and control over the program. And as a result of that, they love doing it. And more importantly, when they leave that school, inevitably they go on to do significant things in some other part of their life. And so I think that very much is the true measure of it. And so again, I'm inspired by coaches that are able to do that.
So you have the relationship between the coach and the players.
Yeah.
You have one's relationship with one's ego. And then, Bo, here's what I'm going to say. When I was a little kid, in Little League, in high school, and American Legion, I was fortunate to win championships, right? And then I got to the major leagues and not playing, but, in the front office. And we won 3 world championships with the San Francisco Giants. And by observing that and being close to that, here's the takeaway. When I think about those teams, I think about grit. Like that intangible, right? And that's Angela Duckworth. She wrote that wonderful book on it, did the great TED Talk. But grit, where does grit come into this? Like you said perfectly, you have to have all outstanding physical capability. You have to understand who your team is, the self-awareness, coach and player relationship. And then there's grit, the ability to have that underdog mentality in your relationship with your ego. Where is that, Bo, in your assessment of the athletes and coaches that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I know how she defined, and I agree. It's that long-term perseverance, right, towards the outcome that you want, and that ability just to keep chipping away at something. I'm a massive believer. If she talks about, and others talk about grit, I talk about the concept of chipping away at something. And if I can take, just a little margin today and a little margin tomorrow and a little margin the next day, I apply that to most things in my life, especially today in regards to fitness and exercise. Just chip away, do something is better than nothing always. And so I think it's an inherent capability and quality within any team that's successful is, they know that, even with regards to the work that we do is, you don't just do disc once and then put it away for the season. It's the coaches that are willing to allow and create time to have a 10-minute chat about our profiles, to have a 10-minute chat next week about the behaviors that we worked well on today, a 10-minute chat around, hey, give some feedback to someone else on what you saw them do well, but they incorporate it into their actual system. So I sort of think that the grit element is really systemic, and that it has to, all of these things that we want to work on have to become part of our overall system, where one thing links to another. And there's sometimes you get coaches that try to embed different elements of someone else's program into their own, and that doesn't work, because it's just fundamentally not set up that way to do that. But again, to just chip away at making those tiny margins, and you have to accept that the tiny margins will eventually create a bigger margin, and have that belief in that.
All right, first thought, best thought. This is a one quick answer. First thing that comes to your mind, blurt it out. You ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. 1, how do you deal with adversity?
Keep going.
2, how do you give yourself fuel?
Go for a walk.
3, what does never give up mean to you?
Just persevere, get up, go again.
4, what is the value of collaboration?
Winning.
So, Bo, you've started your own company. You've financed it. You and Liz are running it, hiring people. What do you look for in an ideal candidate?
Someone that's lived their version of high performance at their version of what the highest level is.
6, describe yourself as a leader in one sentence.
Involving. Like to hear the thoughts and opinions of others. Yeah,
Love that.
decide together.
All right, here we go. Last one. It's challenging. What's the difference between a manager and a leader?
A leader is someone that actually makes other people want to be leaders too, in their own way.
Awesome. Bo, this has been tremendous. I could talk to you for 3 hours. I think this is wonderful, and I think the work you do, and Liz, is very important. So thank you.
It's our pleasure, Chris, and yeah, we appreciate it. And the feeling is mutual as well. So thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
And we thank Bo very much for being on the show. I have 3 takeaways from this conversation, everybody. Number 1, chipping away every day, getting better every day. That is what Bo said. That was his way of understanding and translating the term grit to the people that he works with. And you heard him through his own story. He did not win a race as a young rower for many years, but he stayed with it because he enjoyed it. He had joy and fulfillment from the sport. And then look what it led to. He became an Olympian. Number 2, a clean locker room reveals your culture. That was fascinating. I'm sure you thought so as well. You can tell a lot by a team, whether they win or lose, because of their locker room. Is it clean? Who cleans it? Who's responsible for cleaning it? It should be the players. Fascinating. And 3, I'm going to leave you with a quote. Bo and I didn't talk about this. That's okay. I've done some research on him, and I just have to leave you with a quote from Bo. It is this: look to be not the best player on the team, but the best player for the team. Let's leave it at that. And we thank Bo Hanson very much for being on the show. We will see you next week, everybody, on Keep the Line Moving. Thank you very much. Have a great week. Every week, you hear guests on this podcast talk about some of their biggest leadership challenges. As a leader, you want to make an impact on those you lead and reach your organization's goals, while also optimizing your time management. Wherever you are in your leadership journey, we could all use some help. This is what we focus on with our group and individual coaching services. To book a call or get more information, email me directly at chrisg@garganoleadership.com or visit our website at garganoleadership.com. For our podcast and video producer, Jack Radutsky, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwhal, have a great week, everybody.